With another edition of the Everest Connections, I'm AP Harrell, joined by a fine veteran horseman, even though he's a young guy, Adrian Bott, co-trainer of Gay Waterhouse and Adrian Bott Racing down in Australia. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Yeah, thanks very much, AP. Delighted to be on the show.
I'm going to rip off our lead question from our editor, Pallavi. She was noting those trophies behind you, and you have a lot of horses in your stable. If somebody, a banker from Sydney, calls you up and he says, mate, to use one of your terms from down there, I've got $1 million US or $1 million Australian dollars to invest in some horses, are you going to say, hey, let's go for one horse, really go all in, high end, or are you going to ask him, maybe you spread that risk and go after 2 or 3 horses?
Yeah, look, I think very much the Australian way is certainly spreading the risk. Syndication's a huge model down here. We see a lot of the bigger partners that may have traditionally raced horses in sort of sole ownership. We see a number of sort of outfits sort of coming together, partnering, so that they can, as you pointed out, spread their risk and give themselves a number of chances sort of across the board, trying to find that sort of, whether it be stallion prospect or some nice sort of fillies and breeding prospects or tried horses. But certainly that syndication model is very big in Australia. So that would be my number one recommendation, particularly a new guy coming in. You really want to give him a good experience from the outset, and I guess having a few more chances and a sort of a few more sort of on the board there, hopefully, would be best way to go.
Well, Adrian, when you were the new guy coming into the world, there was certainly a high risk that you were going to get into this business. Your dad, Tony Bott, in the business. And at what point did it go in your head emotionally from, hey, Dad is into horse racing, to, hey, Adrian Bott is into horse racing and wants to make that his career?
Yeah, look, I think it was such I guess an advantage having that upbringing, without sort of even sort of realizing or knowing you're absorbing so much from such a young age, just whether it be sort of every conversation at dinner you're listening to with your family, seeing the interaction with sort of owners, clients, whatever it may be throughout my sort of childhood growing up, and just naturally sort of being around the horses, seeing sort of the processes and the way in which they're sort of reared, and the race meetings, some of the fantastic meetings I've been able to sort of attend throughout the world, sort of really opened my eyes to what's possible within the industry. So sort of hard not to be engaged with it, and sort of inspired and sort of dreaming what could be possible for career wise. But my family never pushed me by any means. I think, and I think it's the same for every people sort of going through the industry. They know it's not easy it's not an easy industry to make a career out of. It's it's certainly very time consuming. It absorbs every aspect of your life. So you really do have to love it. So from, I think, a parent's point of view, you're certainly not pushing your children into that space, and that was the case there. I think they really wanted me to find my own feet. If there was certain other dreams that I had, or other passions, other industries, whatever it may be, they just wanted to try and provide me with I was very fortunate, try and provide me with the best education I could get in life, and let me experience as much as possible to see the world, and open up my eyes to what might be possible there outside of the horses. But I was very fortunate that this is sort of what kept drawing me back. So so it wasn't sort of here on your own sort of terms, I guess.
This is the Everest Connections. He's Adrian Bott, the co-trainer at Gay Waterhouse and Adrian Bott Racing. Let's talk a little bit about Gay Waterhouse from your perspective. She's gone from a family friend to a mentor to a boss, and now a partner. You guys are on equal footing, to use a horse term. Discuss the evolution of that relationship, both personal and professional, through your life.
Yeah, it's been sort of quite an amazing journey. You really sort of, sometimes you don't get enough time to stop and actually think back and reflect on sort of what's happened or what's been achieved, or how the partnership's evolved over so many years. You're sort of always just sort of looking ahead and just sort of working hard at it day to day. But I guess in such a fortunate position to be given that opportunity by someone, or not just someone, Hall of Fame trainer who's got some amazing history behind not only what she's done herself. She's been obviously broken all the records here, and her father was an amazing trainer, one of Australia's best. He won the premiership down here 33 consecutive years. He won the Sydney Training Premiership.
Let that sink in. That's a third of a century, 33 consecutive years. If you can tie your shoes 33 consecutive years, that's impressive. But to win that, that's nuts. That's crazy.
That just sort of puts into perspective just sort of how dominant he was at the time. And, you know, she's had to come out of his shadow and sort of come out and prove herself. And there's a number of records that she's equaled and in some cases better than her dad. And as I said, sort of putting that into perspective, that's really saying something. So to have that, even just to be working for someone like that, but then to have that opportunity to work alongside, and then, as you said, sort of be in partnership and have that mentoring role. It's been phenomenal, and you know, Gay's shown a lot of trust, you know, throughout that process, and a lot of loyalty, which, you know, certainly always want to, you know, return that favour. I feel, you know, a lot of loyalty to the stable. I want to continue to uphold that tradition that it has. I really want to see that name be continue to be successful. I want to see that sort of Waterhouse Smith Tulloch Lodge name, you know, forever being winning these big feature races and known as a you know, a top stable within the Sydney ranks.
Balancing those pressures, but also having a good time and leading your life is certainly a challenge. He's Adrian Bott. This is the Everest Connections. He's a co-trainer, Gay Waterhouse and Adrian Bott Racing. Let's talk about a specific horse in your stable. You just never know what's going to happen. I guess an off day, we might say, for in the Congo on Saturday at the G2 McEwen Stakes. What happened there?
Yeah, really tricky race course, Moonee Valley. You know, it's one of the tightest sort of tracks we would have in Australia. So it's very much a specialist course. And obviously in Melbourne, they're racing the different direction to what they are here in Sydney. So that was his first look at Moonee Valley there. And he drew awkwardly, even though it was a small field. He drew barrier 7 in a field of 7. And tactically, it was always going to be a very difficult race. And we just landed in a position we really didn't want to within that race. A number of sort of quick horses inside of us. We just ended up out in no man's land in the race, covering plenty of ground, doing plenty of work, and sort of forcing the issue a bit. So got a little bit lost around there his first time. It was sort of hard for him to get his balance with the tempo. It's really a frenetic sort of speed that it's run at those 1,000-meter races. Some of those horses there, you won't find any you know, quicker horses than those in Australia. So yeah, things didn't quite work out, but that's sort of what we've got to do now. We know he's a good horse. We know he's a Group 1 horse at that, you know, at that sprinting trips, and he's capable of winning those races. So we just got to get him back and sort of get him back on track. And now he's had that experience at Moonee Valley. We just sort of go back to the drawing board. What's the best now suitable races, sort of knowing the horse. You know, I think we can go back with a bit of confidence that he's had exposure at that track, but we're most likely to see him over 1,200 meters there next time. And that's just a completely different style of race in itself than the 1,000 meters. So unfortunate the way things unfolded. It's very, yeah, didn't necessarily work out by any means in favor of him. So I'd be very, very, very forgiving.
Adrian, I really appreciate that answer. And I can see now why Gay Waterhouse talks about your attention to detail. You really laid it out for us there. And my question for you is, as a trainer after a race, whether it's a disappointment, whether it's about what you expected, whether it's a pleasant surprise, how many times do you go back, and you can do it digitally now with, you know, stop right here and look at it perhaps frame by frame, section of the race with your notepad? Break that down for us.
Yeah, look, obviously, I think it's important to analyze the race and what's unfolded, and were there any things in whether on the day we could have changed differently or changed with our approach to the race or the preparation. And they're the things that sort of continually can, you know, you can dwell on for so long, so many different sort of scenarios you go through, so many variables to analyze, and you can really sort of tear yourself apart at times with the amount of variables that you can analyze and overanalyze. So I think it's important to have the reflection on it, and know, are there things within your control that you could have changed differently to affect the outcome there? And if
Adrian,
there were, I think that's important that's addressed.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to jump in there, but I'm going to guess with your guys' partnership, you're Mr. Attention to Details. Gay has that flamboyant background. She's an actress, loves fashion. there's some nice healthy give and take. She might be saying, hey, don't beat yourself up over all these details. You might be saying, hey, Gay, let's take a look at this. This actually might matter. Am I onto something there, or is that an overreach in my analysis?
I think it's a very good balance in that sense. And maybe that's why, I feel there's great aspects to where the partnership works and what sort of strengths each of us can sort of provide, or different insights and balance. And like you said, whilst there's an important aspect on analysing, there's also, all right, well, that's been dealt with. And the most important thing is, well, how are we going to move forward from that so that, it's not happening again, and we're resurrecting that result and change it next time we step out. And as you said, I think that's, equally as important to not dwell too long, and with a number of things. And that's where Gay's very good at, in the past it's happened, even whether it be an argument, disagreements, said my piece, leave it, and tomorrow, new day, and we've all moved on, we've moved forward, and yeah, she's excellent like that, and certainly going to be like that with racing to an extent. So yeah, we're looking forward. As I said, we've got a Group 1 1200 meters in a month's time, and you'll see a different result with the colt, and that's sort of the process that now we're looking forward to. All right, well, what's next?
Yeah, and let's jump on here. This is the Everest Connections. You talk about 1200, and that's, of course, the distance for the Everest is a different animal. Is In the Congo still a legitimate horse to consider for folks who are looking to fill a slot for the Everest?
Yeah, look, obviously, well and truly, he's a Group 1 winner at 1400 meters, and a high pressure 1400 meters, and I think you need that for the Everest. The Everest, even though it's only 1200 meters, it's at Randwick, which is traditionally sort of tougher track, and just the natural speed of that race. It's there's not really any sort of give up in it. It's the pressure is on from the minute that they jump. So even though it's 1200 meters, it's a strongly run 1200. You really need to be a tough horse. So having that element of being able to, see that little bit further of 1400 meters, well, that's certainly what's needed. A Golden Rose winner previously. Yes. He backed up and won the Everest. So that's the sort of style of horse that it does take. Whether we are in targeting that race just yet, as I said, first and foremost is that we are getting that Group 1 for in the Congo, this preparation, and there's a couple of targets for that, and one of them, before the Everest. So if he's able to tick that box, naturally he'd put himself in calculation, and then that may sort of then tempt the owners to consider an Everest. Hard not to consider with the prize money for sure, but obviously, it's still developing the status behind the race for recognition from a breeding and stud perspective. So hopefully down the track, that's something that will be looked at. But should still be in contention.
I guess if this was a Hollywood movie, I could put that heat lamp over you like a detective and ask you this question, but I'll ask it anyway. You have to name names, but has anybody called you up to have some initial discussions about the possibility of bringing In the Congo to the Everest?
We had last preparation. The phone was certainly ringing very hot, as I said, after his Golden Rose victory. He really profiled up like a serious Everest contender, and it would have been great to see the horse in the race. On paper, certainly he was good enough to be there and be very competitive. But this time, 12 months ago, he was in his first campaign. He'd only had a handful of starts, and it just would have been a very big ask on the horse at that point in his career. So naturally, we elected to bypass it, looking forward and trying to sort of look after his career. But at the moment, we've made it known sort of quite well sort of within Australia here that this is our path that we're heading down first before we consider an Everest.
If someone calls you up and says, hey, Adrian, I want to talk about In the Congo for the Everest, but I want you to give me a couple of other horses that potentially I should consider, who would they be in your stable?
Look, unfortunately, we're probably a little bit light on in the sprinting ranks at present. It's something that we're going to have to sort of try and with this, with the race now, we're really going to have to sort of try and maybe change the way we look at a couple of things. We have traditionally looked at tried horses, so often for the staying feature races, whether there's an angle that we can look at bringing some international flavour for the Everest in the sprinting ranks. Just trying to find something that can find a hole in a horse like Nature Strip. I guess it's hard when he goes on the world stage and does what he does. He's the best in the world. He's hard to beat for a reason. But we can get some. A horse like Eduardo, it's quite amazing. He's an 8-year-old horse, and they're still going around at the top of their game. So when you can get these sprinters, they can certainly be effective for many years. Red Zell won it, I think, sort of 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row, I forget. But he was certainly there, very competitive. So they can be very effective when you get them. So we're just biding our time, and hopefully one's not far off. But certainly, as I said, in the Congo, be our leading chance at present.
I appreciate your candor because, at least in America, I don't know about in Australia, if you go into the car dealership and you're looking for a sports car and they show you a sports car and you don't like it and you say, can you show me another sports car? Well, we don't have a sports car, but how about a pickup truck? How about a minivan? So I appreciate your honesty there. Adrian, let's go back in the past in your stable. You guys have had some runners in the Everest. 2017 English. That's the language that why Australians and Americans can communicate, right? English. And in 2021, Embracer finished 11th. Doesn't matter where you finish in the Everest, just to be in the Everest, you're a fantastic horse. Let's start with English. Tell us a little bit about that horse.
Yeah, she was a fantastic sprinting mare, homebred for the Kellys, New Haven Park, and she was sort of one of the best fillies of her generation. She raced in the Golden Slipper. She won a Group 1 at weight for age at 3. Sort of, you're beating the older males, and certainly very, very dominant. That was over 1,400 meters. So again, one that it certainly looked a lovely profile for the race. So she was picked up in the first year. Probably just got her on the back end of her career. We didn't sort of have a lot of luck in the race. We sort of got she had that pattern where she had an electric finish, and she sort of got back and would sort of usually sort of flash home, and probably on that occasion she got sort of a bit further back than anticipated, and just wasn't quite able to get into it when they needed to. It was on speed dominated. They let the horses in front sort of get away with not as much pressure as expected, and from there it's very hard to run them down. So she ran a good race, but certainly wasn't able to feature probably on the best that she's capable of.
And Embracer, what should we know about that fantastic horse?
Yeah, he had an amazing sort of lead up to it. He was very competitive against all the Everest contenders in all the lead up races, and he went through his grades and had the best preparation to date. He'd sort of come a long way. He was a late pickup in the race. Unfortunately, one of the slot holders' horses had gone amiss in the week leading up, and Embracer was just sort of right horse at the right time. He'd sort of performed in the lead ups and was, as I said, had form around the right horses. Just the high pressure days that have probably got to him, and he may have just run his peak. His grand final may have just, in hindsight, was the major lead up race where he ran his peak. So as I said, he probably progressed a lot further than initially anticipated at the start of the preparation. If you'd sort of said he always had him down as a very fast horse, but we've told me at the start of the preparation he was going to be lining up in an Everest. I would have thought that's been some great progression for him.
Adrian Bott is co-trainer of Gay Waterhouse and Adrian Bott Racing. This is the Everest Connections. The Everest is interesting because it's not just owner, trainer, jockey. There's the slot holder. Adds another wrinkle. That's fun for the media, probably frustrating for trainers. Let's imagine a situation where the slot holder and the owner agree on the horse, but the slot holder wants to pick jockey X and the owner wants to pick jockey Y, and they both have your ear, and they say, you've got to break the tie. How do you go about deciding something like that, both politically in terms of these big alpha dogs and also trying to win the race?
Yeah, look, I guess that's sort of been part of the theatre of it all, I guess. It's and that's what's been so amazing about the race. It's the way it's captured. You said the media. It's sort of something that been able to latch onto for almost what feels like 12 months of the year, keeping the race so relevant. It's always in the headlines. Whenever there's a certain sprint feature race on, it's sort of always the unveiling. When's there going to be a move? Who's going to make their next move? Has there been any plays on this particular horse? What deals have been sort of done behind closed doors? And I guess sort of getting back to your question there, with that, the slot holders, it certainly is I guess it's quite contractual sort of with there's plenty of dealing done behind the scenes before anything's executed. So I guess whoever's holding the upper hand, and depending on the time that the deal is done, is where you can maybe sway a few of those little terms of the contract in your favour. So if you've sort of got the right horse and you're sort of one of the first to be secured, I would say that you're sort of probably holding the upper hand on the contract. You might be able to sort of put a few more points in your favour in order to get the deal that you want. However, if 11 of the 12 slots have been filled and there's only one left, and the deal's sort of close to being done, and you're swaying on jockeys, I would say you'd want to probably be leaving. The power's probably in the person who's got the slot in the contract, and I'd say they'd be having the final say there, because if they don't like it, they're not signing it, and they'll just move straight on to the next one, and those guys miss out. So it's sort of, if they want to be in the race, they better put on who they want. So I think it's all signed up on and agreed upon before, but that's probably how the power swings, and I'm happy to stay out of it a little bit at that point in time. Happy to offer some advice if needed, but I won't make the final call in that situation, I'm sure.
Adrian, you've been around the business long enough to know the Sport of Kings can humble anybody. Let's look at the Kentucky Derby this last year. Not only was Rich Strike a long shot, that was a horse that wasn't supposed to run until a late scratch. So sometimes all these best laid plans, and then God laughs at us, and something that comes together at the last minute can come up smelling like roses, to use a Kentucky Derby term.
Yeah, look, I guess, amazing sort of when some of these horses can hit get into the right form, and everything's just sort of falling into place, and you just sort of keep taking next step and next step with the horse, and they just sort of keep improving, keep raising the bar with them. And, who's to deny a horse those opportunities when they are in that sort of type of form? And we're sort of very much the same. You can certainly have an idea and plans in place, and it's probably more with the unexposed horses that are just sort of improving out of sight each time. I think, whilst they're in that form, really worthwhile giving them that opportunity and taking them down that path and trying to capitalise on it while you can, because we all know the variables involved with racing, and how quickly that can change at certain times. So when they do have that patch of form and they're looking well and training well and thriving and needing more and wanting more, I think sort of drive on and give it to them. That's how, some of our best preparations have worked out in that way as well. But certainly, as much as it's so important to have an element of the preparation involved, and for those key horses, the feature races and what those stepping stones look like to land whether it be a Kentucky Derby, a Golden Slipper. Yes, it's so important to have a lot of milestones there, that it doesn't just happen by fluke. But certainly, if that horse is coming through a different path, I wouldn't be denying it the opportunity for just because of history.
Folks, we need an Australian to call the Kentucky Derby. They pronounce it in a much more fun way than we Yanks do. We appreciate the time. Adrian Bott, co-trainer, along with Gabe Waterhouse of Gabe Waterhouse and Adrian Bott Racing. We'll soon find out if In the Congo is in the Everest. Hope to check back with you. Thanks a lot. Best wishes, sir.
Thank you very much, AP.